Hello, and thank you for checking into the Neutral Zone Hotel, an unapologetically left-leaning podcast exploring hockey at its best and worst. My name is SJ, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to the Neutral Zone Hotel. Here to ensure your stay is a memorable one is one of my colleagues, Benjamin.
Hey folks, my name is Benjamin. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan living in Ottawa. Beautiful city, too hot, too rainy, but I'll still say it's beautiful. And I don't really have a good introductory joke, so I'll just say the Toronto Maple Leafs and leave it at that.
Oh. And we will talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs a little bit today, but later on in the show, because we are going to get started with the PWHL, my favorite hockey league to talk about. So the PWHL playoffs are going strong. There are only 2 rounds, but there have been 2 bangers of rounds. Right now, the PWHL Walter Cup final between Boston and Minnesota is occurring. But before we get to the final, I wanted to talk a little bit about what happened in the previous round. The games were Toronto versus Minnesota and Boston versus Montreal. Benjamin, what did you think of those 2 series?
I think Aaron Frankel stole a series. Hell of a performance from Frankel. Tapani was very good, but Frankel stole that series for them. And you can argue about the deployment of Montreal's stars and how they probably, especially with multiple games going to overtime, Montreal put a lot more emphasis on their star forwards, Poulin, Stacey, and Ambrose, especially on the back end, than maybe was wise. Boston spread that out a lot more. Their star power is, I would say, a tiny bit smaller, but they also leaned on their depth in general. And it was the depth that came through in the end in those overtime games. So I really think that it's a warning to teams who will over-rely on their superstars, and also just helps if you have a goalie who's going to be stopping 45 shots a game.
Yep. Yeah, notably, Boston did get scoring from their fourth line. Players like Taylor Winksowski, players who may not even be in the league next year. And they scored big goals in the playoffs, which is actually really incredible and awesome. I agree, though, that Aaron Frankel was an absolute wall for Boston. I think Boston really got hot at the right time for them as well. And I think in many ways, the Montreal-Boston was the sweep, right?
Yeah.
Even though it was a sweep, it still felt like a coin flip. And I could have definitely have seen that series go either way.
Yeah.
I think the big narrative for the Toronto-Minnesota series was the loss of Natalie Spooner, who sustained a knee injury. And after Spooner was out, Toronto's scoring really dried up.
I mean, Spooner put in like 30% of Toronto's goals this year. Mm-hmm. Assisted on more, obviously. Losing her was massive. I really liked that both coaches assessed the injury. So Grace Zumwinkle hit Spooner. She went down awkwardly. Both coaches addressed it and said, it wasn't a dirty hit. It's just one of those things. Playing hockey can be dangerous. And it happens. And Toronto should have the star depth to overcome losing Natalie Spooner. And they just didn't.
Yeah, they really relied on her too much, I think, this year. And the rest of their stars, and they have a great lineup, didn't come through for them.
Yeah.
Minnesota also got hot at the right time.
Yeah.
They really They really backed their way into the playoffs at all. They really desperately tried to miss. But here they are in the final because they did perform in the first round. Heisey got hot. Zungwinkel's playing well. Jakes is starting to really come around.
Minnesota lost all 5 games after the international break, and then the first 2 games of the playoffs. So they were on a 7-game losing streak when they came to Minnesota. And maybe that's why only 3,000 Minnesotans showed up to support the team. But what really blew me away was after they won and after Spooner went out, the attendance got worse the next time. So it's, I don't know, it's interesting. But hopefully with them going for a championship, game 3 will have really good attendance, especially if they can pull out a win tonight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see. Let's move on to Boston versus Minnesota in the final. Boston took game 1. Erin Frankel is continuing to, I think, carry her team. And Taylor Heisey has really got a hot stick lately. What do you think of that series?
It's not the series that I would have expected us to see going into the playoffs. Once we knew what teams had qualified, I would have been pretty certain that one or both of Montreal or Toronto were going to be here. I was really shocked Minnesota came back too. Just like I said, they had been putting up stinkers after the international break. Boston, I'm not as shocked about. They went on a bit of a tear coming back. They fought to get into the playoffs. The only team that beat them after the international break was Ottawa in overtime, in a shootout, actually. So Boston has been, on fire. Hillary Knight, who was fairly not noticeable for the first, 2/3 of the season or whatever it was, she's come on. Susanna Tapani really has been, the key to their offense, and that they got her back in that Jakes trade. So that trade is really key to both teams being here right now. So it's interesting. But Minnesota, I was not expecting them. Their forwards have a certain level of star power that I am excited to see if they can solve Frankel, because it doesn't seem like anybody can do that right now. And if that continues to be true, we're going to see Aaron Frankel not only win the first ever Walter Cup, but be the first ever Ilona Koss MVP. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind right now who deserves to be named the MVP of this tournament.
Yeah, I agree. And Frankel did let in 3 in game 1. She is currently let in a couple in game 2. So I do think that Minnesota has, she doesn't appear to be the same amount of brick wall in this second round, in this final. But Boston still needs to come through with the offense to support. So I don't know how this series is going to go. But by the time you hear this, you might. So it'll be interesting.
You got to solve her, which is a big part of it, but you have to be able to solve her enough, right? She's proven she can make the big save so that when the game is on the line, she can stop that crazy attempt, or she can shut down a forward with a breakaway when that forward has the chance to go up, be it go up 1-0 or go up 3-2 or 5-4. That's the kind of goaltender who wins championships, not necessarily winning every game in a shutout, but making the big stops when the game is on the line. And that's what she's proving herself to be. And I know Minnesota was riding Maddie Rooney, who had been 1B-ish in the regular season, but now they've put in Hensley after Rooney gave up 4 in game 1. So that's a little interesting wrinkle, I think, as well. One side's got a bit of a goaltending controversy, and the other is it is Aaron Frankel or bust. Emma Soderberry is not coming in unless there's an injury. So,
Yep. Yeah, Minnesota has been rotating much more than some of the other PWHL teams with their goalies. They seem to like both of their goalies a lot.
Yep, and they should.
So
They're excellent, but
yeah, they absolutely are. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the awards. So they are announcing award finalists kind of as we go through the playoffs, and I believe they will announce winners in June, but we have had a few announced so far. So Rookie of the Year is Alina Mueller with Boston, Emma Malte with Toronto, and Grace Zumwinkle with Minnesota. Do you agree with those choices, or is there somebody else you would have liked to see?
I think that they're the right three. I'm really curious to see. I feel like Malte shouldn't win. I feel like it should be Grace Zumwinkle. She had a hell of a year in Minnesota. She's one of the reasons they stocked enough points before the international break to go to the playoffs. But I also wonder, Malte plays in a bigger market and made the national team this year, so it will be interesting. Mueller, I feel, had a good year, but she was really highly touted, and I don't think she quite lived up to the expectations on her.
Yeah, I thought that she was a little quieter in Boston than I expected, but at the same time, I thought the entire Boston roster kind of underperformed through most of the year, so I don't necessarily put that on her. My big question is, and I know that voting has already happened, but my big question is whether we're going to see something really exciting out of her in these playoffs, and I haven't seen that yet either.
Other than, unfortunately, the big injury to Spooner, which again, not intentional, but I think that's the only time I've really noticed her on the ice.
Well, wasn't that Zumwinkle?
Oh, crap. You're talking about Mueller. Yeah. Mueller had a good international tournament, too. But it's just good. So she's been playing on that line with Knight. So as Knight goes, I think Mueller will go.
Yeah, could be. All right, Forward of the Year. The finalists are Alex Carpenter with New York, Marie-Philippe Poulin with Montreal, and Natalie Spooner with Toronto.
Yeah, I think that's the exact right combination. Carpenter is one of the only reasons New York got any wins.
That's true.
But then Poulin and Spooner, I think, are on a level above Carpenter this year. No offense to Alex Carpenter, who's an excellent hockey player. And I think this one's going to Natalie Spooner. So,
I agree. Natalie Spooner was just an absolutely. I think she had a career year. Probably. I don't know if she was lights out, just transcendent, I want to say, this year.
It's really tough to say in the PWHL because of lack of comparison. A lot of these women who are the top players were out of league play for so long due to the closure of the CWHL and the rift between them and what became the PHF. But I mean, like, I'm just going to pull up Spooner's stats right now. So last year, the PWHPA, Spooner played 7 games and scored 1 goal. The year before, 4 games, 3 points. With the Toronto Fury, she was 15 goals, 11 assists, 26 points in 26 games. This year, 20 goals, 7 assists, 27 points in 24 games. So I think it's fair to say this is definitely... She did have a better year proportionally, points-wise, in 2015-16, but the CWHL is not the PWHL. It is a vastly inferior league. And she was a lot younger back then. I don't know. It's a hell of a year for someone who's in her 30s, someone who's 18 months out from having a child, from growing a literal human being inside her. And you could tell, like, the first couple games she wasn't comfortable, but once she figured it out, it was lights out the whole year. So I think the Forward of the Year award, the condition is very straightforward. Who was the best forward in the PWHL last year? Natalie Spooner scored 20 goals in 24 games. That
incredible.
Is as a percentage, if you bring that to the NHL, right? That's divided by 24. times
around 70.
82. Yeah, it is 68 goals. So that's like Austin Matthews in a league where only a couple people scored a point per game.
Yep. And to put that in context, the next highest goal scoring was 11 goals in the PWHL. 11. And she got 20.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Yep.
So not a lot to argue with there. Defender of the year, Erin Ambrose with Montreal, Megan Keller with Boston, and Ella Shelton with New York. What do you think?
I think Megan Keller was a bit of a shock for me. I thought for sure the third option on this was going to be Renata Fast. Other than that, I expected to see Shelton. Shelton, again, there's 3 reasons why New York won any games. Alex Carpenter and Ella Shelton are 2 of them. Corinne Schroeder is the 3rd, and I expect her to be nominated for goaltender of the year when that pops up. Keller had a good year. Shelton had a good year, but Erin Ambrose was an absolute stud on defense for Montreal. Eating minutes, setting up goals, scoring big goals. The best way I can say it is watching Erin Ambrose this year was like watching peak Erik Karlsson. She was everywhere. She had the best takeaways. She had the best offense. An absolute stud. And when it comes to, we talked about her playoff deployment a little bit earlier, they leaned on her for damn good reason. She, in that triple overtime game, if she had been in the NHL, it would have been the 5th most time of any NHL player ever. And that's in this league's first year. And even though she was tired at the end of it, she was still as effective comparatively. Everyone else, I think, needed rest, but Erin Ambrose looked like she could go forever. I'm sure she didn't feel that. And on the off chance she listens to this, like, I recognize that hard ass work she was putting in, but she looked at, she was still as good. Yeah, she's a hell of a player.
All right. Can't argue with that. She is a hell of a player. Coach of the year, Corey Chevry with Montreal, Courtney Kessel with Boston, and Troy Ryan with Toronto. What do you think of these?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I strongly suspect Chevry is the 3rd selection here. Montreal, I feel like they underachieved given their star power. And when Poulin was injured, they basically fell apart. They finished 2nd, and great, that gets you a nomination. But I'm not seeing it. I feel like it's between Troy Ryan, who put together a team that dominated the regular season, went on, that incredible...
Had a rough start, too, pulled out of it and came back to dominate.
Yeah, I mean, like, does the rough start coincide with those 3 or 4 games that it took Spooner to get her legs? Yes. But, still. And then Boston coming back from the international break, hanging around, underperforming, and then figuring it out. I feel like Troy Ryan probably deserves the award the most, but I feel like, recency bias may favor Kessel. So this one's a coin flip for me. Mm-hmm. I'd vote for Ryan. My ballot would have been Ryan, Kessel, Chevry in that order. But who knows what the award voters are going to pick.
Yeah, so let's turn our attention to the awards.
Oh, before you say that, I just want to say, if Ottawa had qualified for the playoffs, Carla McLeod wins this in a heartbeat, because nobody expected Ottawa to make the playoffs at the start of the year, and they pulled it off. But they didn't, she's probably got a couple third-place votes.
Fair enough. So let's turn our attention to how the awards are selected, the committee, the 18-member committee, and the controversy around that. Why don't you tell us what the Professional Hockey Writers Association had to say about the selection committee?
Yeah, so it came out as the awards were announced, the concept of the awards were announced, it came out that it would be an 18-person award committee for this year that was submitted their ballots at the end of the regular season. So obviously no postseason is going to be considered in this. It was, and I have the list here, 3 national media contributors, 6 media members who provide dedicated coverage of teams and markets, 2 former players, a PWHL PA representative, and all 6 team head coaches / general managers. So they get 1 vote for the coach and general manager. Teams are not permitted to vote for members of their own organization, and it's top 3 awards. So they picked Alex Azzi for national media, Haley Salvian for national media, and John Wawrow from the Associated Press for national. Gail Triani for Boston, Rachel Blount for Minnesota, Catherine R.V. Pinard, who is related to Montreal's Raphael R.V. Pinard for Montreal, Rick Menning for New York, Michaela Schreider for Ottawa, Mike Ganter in Toronto, Megan Duggar and Becky Keller are the retired players. Liz Knox is the PWHL PA executive.
Becky Keller is also notably a PWHL broadcaster.
Yes, which they do say in this press release. So the PHWA, yeah, the Professional Hockey Writers Association, which does most of the voting on NHL awards, we're not happy. And it's worth noting that major women's hockey outlets like Ice Garden are missing from this particular report. Mm-hmm. And
I was a little surprised Ian Kennedy didn't get a vote, considering how, as a member of the hockey writers, he has blanketed women's hockey coverage. Like, he is an incredibly prolific writer in the women's hockey space.
Yeah, exactly. So on May 14th, the PHWA put in a report, or put out an open statement that says, I'm going to read it. For several months, the PHWA's women's hockey chapter has attempted to establish a working relationship with the PWHL, mostly to no avail. We have noticed some of the feedback we provided regarding access and availability has improved. Conversations with the league have moved at a glacial pace and left us with more questions than answers, including the value the PWHL places on independent coverage. Further, we are baffled that nearly all of the active members of the PHWA's women's hockey chapter were not included in the PWHL Awards Selection Committee. The league's handpicked committee ignored and disregarded many dedicated individual media members and entire outlets who have devoted significant resources to covering the PWHL's inaugural season from start to finish. That includes us, by the way. We could vote. We just did it. We just talked about it. But
I'm personally happy to be just a fan.
There you go. Yes. So there's a little bit more there. But yeah, it's signed Erica L. Ayala and Frank Saravelli. And according to Ian Kennedy, they released this 30 minutes before they went into a meeting with the PWHL, where the PWHL apparently promised a bunch of stuff, and then the next day they walked it back, saying our statement yesterday painted with too broad a brush, insinuating any voter invited to participate in PWHL awards does not provide independent coverage, which is not the case. But we stand by our message that PWHL is a long way to go in creating an equitable media landscape. So there's definitely some back and forth here, and I think the criticism is correct. This is not an independent panel by any means.
Yeah, I think it's a little weird that they gave the teams votes.
Yeah, I mean, in the NHL, they do for the Vezina Award.
Yes.
Which is also weird.
Yeah, it is strange that it is one award that they give, that the GMs vote on, and also for goaltending, the possibly the worst position they could have chosen for that.
Yeah, it's strange. I can't disagree with the people they chose for the national representatives. Mm-hmm. Alex Azzi, Haley Salvian, and John Wawrow are big advocates for women's hockey, especially Haley, who has really built a career on it now and does an excellent job.
She does.
But, like, I don't know.
I'm a little surprised they didn't give more votes to the broadcasters. Like, I would have expected something there, you know?
Well, I mean, the thing that's wild about that to me is all the broadcasters are employees of the PWHL. So I think there is a little bit of bias if you go that route. But I think there is a lot more compromise here. And frankly, I'd love the PHWA to be involved, because one of my favorite things, and we're going to do this when they release the ballots, we're going to go over all the crazy ballots, like who's giving Connor McDavid third place Selke votes and crap like that. I love
that is the fun part.
I love looking at the ballots and trying to find out who the disgusting homers are, like Josh Yohe. Josh Yohe, I know you're doing insane things with your ballots this year, so I can't wait to talk about it on the podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the controversy. We won't know until next year if they've moved the needle here, but not being a friend of the media organization seems like a not smart move.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of get they want to do their own thing and they want to control their narratives a bit, but I don't think that like long term it's really the move. So I hope they manage to work something out.
Yeah.
All right. So before we move on, I just wanted to remind our delightful listeners, all of whom I love dearly, that we are available now on YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. We'd love it if you went in and subscribed to the channel, click liked on the videos, leave some comments. I'll read them. You can also follow us on Instagram or Blue Sky at Neutral Zone Hotel, and you can look at the beautiful cards that I make for each episode. Please tell me if you like them. I'm not insecure at all.
I like them.
You can also... Oh, great. Excellent. I worked so hard. I really strained my graphic design abilities to the breaking point, to be honest. You can join our Discord at neutralzonehotel.com/Discord if you want to hang out with us. We tend to chat a lot during games, so if you want to be a part of that, we'd love to have you. And if you like this episode, please rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice. Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the NHL and hopefully the Memorial Cup. It was a very exciting second round to the NHL playoffs. The Canes fell flat, could not beat the Rangers despite a very gutsy comeback attempt. And the Oilers beat the Canucks in 7 games. As Benjamin does a little fist pump. Trevor's not here to be sad about it. Let's start. I actually kind of wanted it is freshest in my mind. Let's talk a little bit about the Oilers-Canucks series.
Yeah. Really good series. And I thought that the Oilers were going to steamroller the Canucks, and they kind of did in the end, but it took them a while to get going. So, those first 4 games, they were able to win 1, but the effort was missing in a lot of cases, and Vancouver played a really, really great, tight game. And you know what? Huge shout out to Artur Silovs, who was thrust into a tough situation and really stood on his head. He gave the Canucks every possible chance. It's rare that you can tell a team that you just lost your Vezina goalie, your Vezina caliber goalie, but it's actually not going to be why you lose in the playoffs. So Silovs deserves his laurels. Hopefully they're going to consider him for the big club next year.
Yeah, he's an RFA this year. I think that he's definitely earned himself a contract. I think he should have earned himself that full-time backup job for the Canucks. The only wrinkle is that he will also still be waivers eligible next year. So if they actually would like to be 3 deep at goal, then he might end up spending some time in the AHL, if only because a waiver eligible goalie is a real asset. And I totally agree that
do you mean waiver eligible or waiver exempt?
Sorry, waiver exempt is what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So
yeah, he's waiver exempt.
Yes, Shilovs has a really good record for young goaltender. I'm going to pull it up. Archers.
We love our Latvian goaltenders. You're on the neutral zone hotel.
When Shilovs came on the scene, I immediately educated SJ about the legend of Archers Berube. So yeah, he's really cool. So last year, Latvia won the bronze medal at the IIHF championships, which we're going to talk about, just not this week. We'll talk about it next week when the thing is mostly done and we can have some thoughts, because I have thoughts. But Shilovs went, had a great run over there, put it up 0.921, went 7-3. And yeah, they won the bronze, which one of the biggest things Latvia's done in a long time in hockey. In Abbotsford this year, he was 0.907. He won 16 out of 34 starts and 6 OTL. And yeah, in the playoffs, 0.898. But again, he was thrust into this thing, and
I mean, that's so much better than Stuart Skinner on the other end of the rink.
Yeah, Stuart Skinner.
He was stinker. He was terrible. This playoffs, just he lost the net for 2 games to Calvin Pickard, who is certainly a warm body in goal.
He is a goaltender.
Yeah, I mean, certainly better than me.
Pickard won 1. Pickard lost 1. He put up 0.915 goaltending, which is much better than Skinner. But they went back to him for They went back to Skinner for game 6, and I
think they made life easy on him.
I was so stressed watching Stuart Skinner in that game because he was out of position. He wasn't moving well. You could tell he was super nervous. I thought he looked a lot better in game 7.
Yeah, I agree.
In both games, the Oilers shut down the Canucks for large periods of time. And even though the Canucks made it interesting at the end of game 7, they were able to keep those shots away. We don't know what's exactly wrong. I'm sure something's wrong with Pettersson, the way he was playing. But they also lost Brock Besser to a blood clot before game 7. So I don't know that they had the offensive firepower at any point to match with Connor and Leon. And, of course, Evan Bouchard and his incredible point shot. So.
Yeah, the Canucks played a good shutdown game. It's not the most exciting hockey to watch. They deployed JT Miller defensively against McDavid and were very successful with that deployment. But they had real trouble generating offense going the other way. And I thought the Oilers in game 5 were awful. They were so bad. They were so bad that I thought for sure the Canucks were going to close them out in game 6. And I scheduled like a conflicting game night for Monday because I was like, there's no way there's going to be a game 7. Like I had no expectation that it was going to 7 games. And then the Oilers came out in game 6 and they said, we're a very experienced playoff team and we know what to do here. And they just completely shut down any offense that the Canucks could get going. And I think they dominated possession. And that was it. That was it. And then the Canucks in game 7, I don't think they were on the ice for the first half of that game.
They had 2 shots in the first period. They had a 4-minute double minor from a high stick on Pettersson, and they put exactly 0 shots on the net. And that's in a game 7. That's unacceptable. And the amount of effort, like they came on in the third. You cannot wait until the third period. You cannot spot the Edmonton Oilers 3 goals.
You absolutely cannot.
And the Oilers, they got depth scoring, they got second line scoring, they got top line scoring, and then they forced the Canucks to play poorly for more than 30 minutes. And once they ceded some of the zone, and I'm not sure it's the Canucks taking it, I think it might just be the Oilers taking their foot off the gas.
Yeah, they defensively shelled up in the third, and that really allowed, and I think that was a poor decision as far as coaching goes, because they ceded puck possession. And when the Oilers were successful in this series, it is because they were possessing the puck. They were not allowing the Canucks to possess and do anything. And by defensively shelling up in the third, they just kind of ceded their real defensive advantage, which was having the puck on their stick.
The best thing you can do if you're the Edmonton Oilers is be trying to score goals. Because when you are out there and you have your foot on the gas and you're pushing hard, you're going to get more goals than the other team, because you have Connor and Leon and Zachary Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And Evan Bouchard is now scoring 90-mile-per-hour slap shots from the point, because he can not only hit that thing hard, he can put it in the top corner of the net every time. And why are you playing defense? Just go out there and run them over. And the second the Oilers stopped running over the Canucks got back in it. So
I think they learned the wrong lesson from the LA series, because they had that one game that was like a 1-0 game where they defensively shelled like the entire game, and they got all of this praise in the media. They got all of this praise because it's like, oh, the Oilers have proven that they can win in a close defensive game. But I think what it totally ignored is the fact that LA stinks and they can't generate.
Yeah, LA doesn't have top end scoring talent.
They absolutely do not. And I think that game taught them the absolute wrong lesson. And I'm going to say it. I think they're going to play the Stars. I think the Stars are a much better team than the Oilers. And I think it's going to be Stars in 5.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Yeah. I think it has been pretty awful to watch McDavid and Draisaitl's primes kind of get wasted a bit. But and even though the Oilers are in the Final Four this year, and they have been here before, they were here, 2 years ago, I still don't feel like they have achieved the depth they need to be a real cup contender, to go take it all the way. And I just don't think that they have what it takes to beat the Stars this year, who have just been a really all-around strong team at every position.
The Stars are a fucking wagon right now.
They absolutely are.
There's no way around it. And Pete DeBoer has them humming. All 4 lines are going. The elder statesmen are playing well. The youth is playing well. Jake Ottinger's found his game after a fairly mediocre regular season. The only thing that's counting against him is the fact that Pete DeBoer can never get out of the conference finals. But
this could be the year. I would not be surprised.
Yep. So
he's going to do it on the strength of Wyatt Johnson, Wonderkin.
But that being said, if the Oilers get out there and dictate terms with Connor and Leon on the ice, which they are perfectly capable of doing against any team in the league, including the Dallas Stars, if they can play their way, they can win. But I personally think the Oilers are going to have a tough time. Now, they're
going to have a tough time winning the minutes that Draisaitl and McDavid aren't on the ice.
All the stats nerds favor the Oilers. And I think that at best for the Oilers, this is a coin flip.
All right, we'll find out. Let's look at the East a bit. I mentioned that the Carolina Hurricanes had a valiant attempt to come back against the Rangers, ultimately failed. I know that you are a well-established Rangers hater, but I am asking you to just take a little bit step back from that and just give me kind of your honest opinion on the Rangers as a complete team and not just a team that happens to have Chris Kreider on it.
And Jacob Trouba and Matt
And
Rempe.
Jacob Trouba. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they've got one of the best goaltenders in the world. Right there, you are probably better than Florida. Bobrovsky is playing well, but the Rangers, I think, have the edge there. They have Adam Fox, one of the top offensive defensemen in the world.
He hasn't been himself this playoff.
Who has not been producing. Who has been producing? Vincent Trocheck is on fire. Zibanejad is going crazy. There's Panarin's been scoring big goals. So I think that they're...
Lafreniere's had a real coming out party this year as well.
Yeah, good for him. And he's really providing second line scoring, that's good.
Yeah, he's been great on that line with Panarin.
Yeah,
absolutely, and Trocheck.
So I think that Florida has a slight edge on the back end with Ekblad, Montour, and Ekman-Larsson providing that depth scoring. Forsling?
Excuse me, Gustav Forsling is their number 1D. I think Ekblad, I'm going to be real honest with you, I think he's a little cooked. I think he can't really skate anymore, and that Forsling is carrying that pair. That's what I was just getting to, is Ekblad I think is still good, but Forsling has been excellent. Like I was getting to that. That was the point. So I really think Florida's got the advantage on the back end up front. I agree.
I mean, if Sasha Barkov can shut down Panarin, like the Panarin line, Florida's got this thing.
I do think that it's going to depend a bit on whether Sam Bennett is healthy. So in the first round, Sam Bennett took a puck to the hand on a friendly fire shot from Brandon Montour. He missed quite a few games. And when he came back in the second round, he was absolutely dragging down that second line with Verhaeghe and Tkachuk. He can't handle the puck. Like his hand is screwed up. And they closed out the series by taking him off that line and putting Lundell back on because he was really killing anything that Verhaeghe and Tkachuk tried to make happen. So
I think Brad Marchand would disagree with you that his hand doesn't work.
I mean, there's I can punch you in the face, and then there's I can stick handle, and those are different. So there is quite a long layoff in between series and a chance to get healthy, but I'm just not sure. If Bennett is not healthy, I'm not sure how well the Panthers' forward depth is going to hold up to what the Rangers can bring them. I do genuinely think that this is going to be a very close series. I'm seeing it go.
This one's going
7 games.
Yeah.
It's gonna. I really feel it's gonna be a 7-gamer, and special teams are going to be really important. The Rangers have an absolutely incredible power play right now, but the Florida penalty kill is also extremely good. So they've got Barkov and Reinhart scoring shorthanded goals like crazy on that penalty kill.
Barkov just won the Selke and well earned. He is awesome. So.
Yeah, he is great. I'm going to be very interested to see what matchups people are looking for. Do they want to throw Barkov out against the Panarin line? I don't know. The Zibanejad Kreider line is also incredibly effective. So what are they going to throw against them? The third line, maybe? we'll see what
Yeah, we'll see.
we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see if Paul Maurice can actually coach, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch regardless. And but although I may not watch any of the games because I am an incredibly anxious person, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking slight edge to the Panthers, but it's definitely gonna be 7 games. Feels like a 7-game series.
It does. It does. To roll it back to the Canes a little bit, they did lose, but that did not stop Carolina from re-signing their most important player, Rod Brind'amour, who is actually the coach.
The most important free agent, yeah.
He didn't quite get to free agency, but he did re-sign for 5 years. He also got all of his assistants re-signed, which was apparently a sticking point. And there was quite a bit of negotiation through the media there at the end. Lots of rumors floating around about how he was going to walk to Seattle, something that literally no one believed. But it did get Dundon to sign the check. What do you think, RBA staying in Carolina?
I mean, he's maximized the value of their team.
Yeah. Their team is going to have a lot of turnover next year. They have to completely rebuild the defense. They've got quite a bit of turnover that's going to happen at forward as well. I'm not sure what their goaltending is going to look like. Like, do they want to move forward with Anderson and Kochetkov? Anderson was not great in the playoffs. He was kind of, I don't know, playoff Freddie is not great.
Yeah, the Toronto Maple Leafs will tell you that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think?
I think the reason you keep Rob Brind'amour on staff is to make sure that the Hurricanes play Hurricane hockey next year, regardless of whoever you bring in. I think that for them, the focus has to be on if they can keep Jake Guentzel, they should. If Jake Guentzel wants $10 million to stay, they should pay Jake Guentzel $10 million to stay. Because what Brind'amour has needed for the past 3 or 4 years with this team is a guy who can score 45 goals. And Jake Guentzel was scoring goals and buckets for this team. He's got the chemistry with Aho and Svechnikov to really unlock them as well. And he could very well be the key to Carolina finally getting a dominant top line. Yeah, I don't know. I think Rob Brind'amour is one of the best coaches in the NHL. I think he has been for the last few years. I know that the type of hockey he plays is criticized, but the fact of the matter is nobody's ever given him a forward who can play at an elite level the way that we want to see those forwards play. Svechnikov and Aho are great forwards. They're not game-breaking goal scorers. Guentzel is, and the Hurricanes were different with Guentzel in the lineup. They were far more fun to watch.
Yeah, Guentzel has a real gravity, especially if you watch him on the penalty kill.
Oh, yeah.
He made that the power play. He made that power play work by sitting in that bumper spot. He drew defenders to him, which really opened up looks that were not available to the forwards on the bumper slots as well. So, really, I think he's a really important player, and I do hope that they decide to pay him, if only to keep him out of the West.
Yeah, no, I think if you're not getting Guentzel, you have to go find somebody who can score goals. And they've kind of been on that quest for the last few years, and it hasn't worked out. But Guentzel did. Just pay the man, and you'll keep him around for 7 years or whatever. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see. But for whatever reason, I do think that Rod Brind'amour is an excellent NHL coach. I think that he has shown this year that he is capable of coaching different skill levels. He's not just a guy that squeezes the most out of mid-skill players. He is capable of taking an offensive player and letting them go and using his ability to coach defensively and coach smartly to open up ice for that player. So I do think if Brind'amour had chosen to leave Carolina, there would have been significant interest for him. But I also don't believe anyone thought he was leaving.
He didn't want to go, certainly.
No, his stuff's there. And he won a Stanley Cup there, and his family's there. And Yeah, I think he's an excellent
He loves
coach.
Carolina.
I think he's an excellent NHL coach. When he eventually does get fired, because that's the game, he will end up as the coach of the Rangers, the coach of the Maple Leafs, the coach of another big franchise. He is that good.
Yeah, someone will roll out the red carpet for him in a few years, no doubt, because that's just the way it works in the NHL. The other, I want to say, much bigger coaching update in the NHL this week
Jim
was
Hillier?
the announcement.
Jim Hillier in LA? That's...
Yeah, nah, not so much. Yeah, Jim Hillier hasn't been announced officially, but expectation is that Jim Hillier will lose the interim tag in LA and be hired on as their full-time head coach.
I have no feelings about this.
My feelings are, but why though? Because he did not change anything and had exactly the same result as McClellan. So why did they bother to fire McClellan? He's just McClellan 2.0.
They hired DJ Smith as his assistant, and I want that man as far away from me as possible. So,
Okay, fair enough. No, but the big news is that Craig Berube has been formally hired as the new head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, ushering in a brand new era of Toronto hardassery. What do you think?
I think they need a Craig Berube. Like Sheldon Keefe's player-friendly approach did not work. Full stop. And while I think Keefe is going to do well, he's still rumored to be the guy in New Jersey. If he goes to New Jersey, I think he'll do really well there. But I think that the players in the Toronto locker room, specifically Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, need somebody to come in and kick them in the ass and say, you need to play some goddamn hockey. And he has proven that he has the capacity to play skill players to the maximum of their ability. He's the guy who got the most out of Ryan O'Reilly. He's the guy who got the most out of Vlad Tarasenko. He got Alex Pietrangelo on a roll, and he even made what's his name? Fighty goalie. Binnington. He even made Binnington good. So that's a bit of a joke, but yeah, like I can't think of a better guy in Toronto of the available coaches. And
no, I agree. He was the logical choice, and the only question was going to be money and term.
Yep.
He was, at the end of the day, I really think the only real contender for that job. I do think that it doesn't matter how good of a coach Berube is and how good a fit he is for that market if they don't figure out their goaltending and they don't figure out their defense.
Oh, well.
So
I have so many thoughts on the Toronto Maple Leafs cap situation. But
I have a lot of roster construction thoughts, but it doesn't matter. Nothing matters until they figure out if they even have a goaltender. And that's what I've got to say about that.
They don't, for reference, they don't, but
they don't. So in other very exciting news, however, the CHL playoffs are over. We have crowned the winners of the 3 CHL leagues. In the Western Hockey League, Jagger Firkus's own Moose Jaw Warriors. I call out Jagger Firkus not because I necessarily think he's the best player on that team.
Best name on the team.
Huh?
Best name on the team.
Certainly the best name on the team, but only because he is a Seattle Kraken prospect, and so therefore he has a special place in my heart. The best player on that team is probably Matt Savoy, who is a Buffalo Sabres prospect. In the Ontario Hockey League, as always and often, the London Knights, who are just year after year a terror on the OHL. And in the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, the Drummondville Voltigeurs, who is a team I know nothing about, and hopefully Benjamin will educate me a bit. But since we have now crowned our our three monarchs of Canada, as it were, we get to move on to one of the more fun, I think, tournaments in hockey, the Memorial Cup. Benjamin, tell us about the Memorial Cup.
I got lots. SJ, what do you know about the Memorial Cup other than what you just said? Like, it's a 4-team tournament that includes a host team and the top 3 teams out of the Canadian Hockey League. What else do you know?
Well, I did watch it last year.
Oh, that's good.
So I did watch the Seattle Thunderbirds were the WHL champion last year. I got to watch Patrick Waugh win that one with his team that I'm blanking on the name of.
The Remparts, Quebec Remparts.
The Quebec Remparts, that's right. So I pretty much just know like the format and what you get from just watching it, but I don't really know any of the history of the cup or anything like that.
Buckle in.
Okay.
All right. So obviously the Memorial Cup is the trophy awarded to the top team in the Canadian Hockey League every year. It's been around for 100 years. It's 105 years old this year. And its origins come from the First World War. So there's a really important guy in the history of hockey named James Sutherland. He was from Kingston, Ontario, and he had played hockey since he was a young man in the 1870s and 80s. He became a shoe salesman, a reserve soldier, hockey coach. He founded the Kingston Frontenacs, the original version of them, in 1897. And he won the Junior Ontario Hockey Association Championship with the Frontenacs in 1910 and 1911. He then joined the Ontario Hockey Association's leadership group. And it was there that he began to bring his ideas of hockey forward. He came up with ideas like, let's change the point and cover point positions in the back to left and right defense. Maybe we shouldn't have 30-minute halves. Maybe we should have 3 20-minute periods. Maybe we should allow players to change during the game. So Sutherland's a really important person in the history of hockey. And there's a lot more to him as a character. Notably, he wanted to make it so that Kingston was considered the birthplace of hockey, which it notably is not. But his whole life was dedicated to that kind of concept.
That's cool.
Like I said, he was a reserve soldier. So in 1915, he was both elected to the president of the Ontario Hockey Association and the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association, which governed all amateur hockey in Canada. And then he was deployed to Europe while still president of those organizations. Sutherland was in his 40s at the time, late 40s. He did not serve on the front line. He was a quartermaster. When he returned to Canada, he was still the president of the CAHA, but he was lucky. 2 of the key members of the Frontenacs that won championships didn't come home. Scotty Davidson, he was the first National Hockey Association player, because there was no NHL when the war broke out, to volunteer for war service. He left the Toronto Blue Shirts to go overseas and died during the Second Battle of Givenchy, which was a sub-battle of the Second Artois in 1915. George Richardson was not a player professionally, but when he played amateur, he won. He led Queen's University to intercollegiate championships, the equivalent of today's U Sports. He led the Kingston's 14th Regiment hockey team to the Senior Ontario Hockey Association Championship in 1908. And then the second ever Allen Cup, which is now the championship for the best senior amateur hockey team in Canada, in 1909. And he was the president of those championship Frontenacs in 1911 and 1912. And yeah, he went to war in 1914 and he was killed leading a trench raid in 1916. Both these men were part of the 1950 inaugural Hockey Hall of Fame class, and Sutherland, their deaths changed him. So when he came home as president of the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association and as a board member of the OHA, he created the Memorial Cup, the Ontario Hockey Association Memorial Cup. It was to be awarded to the winner, the best team in Canada. There'd be a Western Canadian team and an Eastern Canadian team for the best junior hockey team in the country. The first one was contested in 1919 between the University of Toronto schools and the Regina Patricia. And that is the Regina Pats of today. So they're the oldest major junior hockey team in the world.
Wow.
The Saskatchewan Amateur Hockey Association organized the Western Canadian tournament, and they gave them the Abbott Cup, and the OHA and the best team out of Quebec would compete for the George Richardson Memorial Trophy, which was created in the 30s. Originally, the two teams played 2 games, and the tournament was awarded on goal differential, but it was changed to a best of 3 in 1925, and then best of 5 in 1938, and best of 7 in 1943. So it used to be quite a long tournament. Originally, it was hosted either in Toronto or Winnipeg, and occasionally, if you were close, like they would go to Montreal for a game or whatever. But in 1955, one of the qualifying cities would host the cup, so it started to travel around a little bit more. But then things get crazy. So, what do you know about outlaw hockey leagues?
I don't know much. I know that the BCHL has been kind of considered an outlaw hockey league because they don't affiliate with Hockey Canada, but I don't know if that's what you mean.
So this is interesting because I think there's some parallels to the BCHL story. In 1966, a group of well-regarded junior teams in the West were not happy with the amount of hockey development that was happening. They felt that because they were playing with kind of an outdated system, their best prospects it wasn't best on best. There was a lot of junior prospects who had no chance to get it. So they created the Canadian Major Junior Hockey League. A bunch of teams left the various Western organizations to join this team. And the Canadian, the CAHA, did not want to do business with them because they were doing different. They now had a major junior hockey category instead of just junior. So they were declared an outlaw league. And for several years, they operated without funding, without being able to participate in the Memorial Cup, a whole bunch of things like that. In 1969, the remaining Quebec junior leagues merged together and created the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, the QMJHL. And in 1970, the CAHA did a deal with those leagues and the Ontario Hockey Association to create Major Junior Hockey. And that's when the Memorial Cup becomes exclusive to Major Junior Hockey. Before that, it could technically be won by any level of junior.
Interesting.
The OHA created the Ontario Major Junior Hockey League, which was a subdivision of the OHA that took on their major junior hockey teams, and the Memorial Cup began rotating between the 3 groups. However, the OHA was focused on senior hockey. It was focused on junior hockey. So in 1980, the Ontario League split and created the OHL, so it's interesting. The OHL is actually the last of the leagues to be created, even though it's the biggest and the most profitable. Like the other ones, they affiliated directly with Hockey Canada instead of through the OHA. And that's sort of the modern Canadian Hockey League. So that's why I see there's a parallel right now, because the BCHL is trying to force Hockey Canada and the CHL to represent it. And like there's going to be changes, especially as more teams migrate. It's really interesting. 1982 saw the Portland Winterhawks become the first American team in the Memorial Cup. In 1983, they added the host as a 4th contender because, the team,
Three-team tournaments are weird.
And at that point, they had been awarding a host city to each league kind of rotationally. So you could end up with 3 teams playing in Abbotsford, but none of them were from anywhere near Abbotsford. So they added the host team just to get people to show up to the damn thing. And the first year they did this, Portland was the host, and then Portland as the host won.
Ooh, that's awesome.
So that's the first American team to hoist the Memorial Cup is 1983. Occasionally a host team wins their league. In that case, the championship runner-up qualifies for the Memorial Cup as well. But the only time that the runner-up qualifier has won was the Quebec Remparts in 2006. So the Memorial Cup has been played every year since 1919 until 2019. 2020 and 21 canceled due to COVID. The Toronto Marlboros have the most wins with 7. The Oshawa Generals are the active team with the most wins with 5. And the Pats have appeared in 16 Memorial Cups. Yeah, so that's the history of the Memorial Cup. and why it is the way it is today.
I feel like it has, and telling me like this cup, the cup predates the leagues and has over 100 years of history. It's like, okay, so this is a very close this story kind of resembles the story of the Stanley Cup. And I think I understand more why the Memorial Cup itself, winning it, has so much cachet, and like being a Memorial Cup winner means something even to professional hockey players. That's something that they talk about, right? That's something that they consider with a lot of pride. And I think more so than just being like, yeah, and then my team won our league championship, and then we won a little tournament that happened after, right? Yeah. The Memorial Cup tournament is fun as hell to watch, and it is very meaningful to the players who compete in it as well.
At a national level, nobody remembers who wins the individual leagues. They remember who wins the Memorial Cup. And 100%. And that is very true across the country and at all levels.
I think that the presence of the Memorial Cup tournament actually kind of devalues the individual league championships in a lot of ways.
It does, but I don't think anybody would go back at this point.
No, I agree. I think that's kind of a trade-off that the CHL has decided to make.
Do you want to hear some stuff about the teams in this year's edition of the Memorial Cup?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this year it's being held in Saginaw, Michigan, which is the home of the Saginaw Spirit. This is the first time it's being held in the United States since 1998, when it was held in Spokane, Washington. The Spirit is an old franchise. They've been in Saginaw since 2002, but the franchise was founded in 1943 as the St. Catharines Falcons. They went through two more names. I'm not going to say what they are because they're very 1940s. Before they moved.
Pretty racist then.
I would say it's a little racist. Okay. Before becoming the Niagara Falls Flyers and then the North Bay Centennials. Spencer Carberry coached them a couple years ago.
Really?
In 2016-17. And yeah, they've got a lot of notable NHL players have come through there. Owen Tippett, Jamie Alexiak, Philip Ronick, TJ Brody, and they've retired Vincent Trocheck and Brandon Saad's numbers. So they have a bit of a history. Some years the host is a pushover, but not this year. They finished first in the OHL West Division with a 50-16-1-1 record. And they made it to the conference finals in the OHL, where they lost to the London Knights. They lost 4-2. Now, the Knights went 16-2 in the tournament, which means the Spirit were the only team to get a win off them in the postseason so far.
Wow.
So they definitely have a puncher's chance.
Yeah. I've noticed the host teams do tend to load up at the deadline as well.
Yeah. You want to
not just they really do want to be truly competitive and not embarrass themselves at the Memorial Cup.
Exactly. And they do have some really interesting prospects. Owen Beck of Montreal. Mateusz Sapovaliv is a second-round pick of the Knights, probably their top prospect left. Their goaltender, Nolan Lalonde, was undrafted, but is now on an ELC for Columbus. And Zane Perrick, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, is currently the 7th-ranked prospect by Tankathon. So.
Oh yeah, some people have. I've seen some draft previews that have Perrick going to Seattle.
Yeah, I could see it for sure. He looks like he's a good player. The Spirit, I think, are going to be a really interesting team, and they definitely have the chops to do well at the tournament.
Cool.
Quebec's Drummondville Voltigeurs. A Voltigeur is a Napoleonic era scout, light infantry. They had a 16-3 record in the playoffs to win their second Gilles Couteau Trophy. They were founded in 1982, and they've had some NHL coaches as well, Guy Boucher and Dominic Ducharme, who were not necessarily good coaches. Mike Hoffman, Dawson Mercer, Jake Allen, Daniel Briere, Ian LaPerriere and Sean Couturier are some of their NHL alumni. And they do have a couple signed NHL prospects. Nobody projected to go this year high, but the top player there is Maverick Lamoureux, who is a late 2022 first rounder of Arizona, so now property of Utah. So they're probably, like, the Q has the least amount of wins, and I'd say Drummondville is definitely going to be the lowest, like the least likely to win. You already talked about from WHL, the Moose Jaw Warriors. The Moose Jaw, the city, was an original participant in the Outlaw, original, like, predecessor of the WHL. They were the Moose Jaw Canucks, but when the CAHA pulled status from that league, the Canucks pulled their team out because it was an affiliated Canucks team. The Warriors were founded in Winnipeg in 1980 and moved to Moose Jaw in 1984, where they've been ever since. And they've had players like Morgan Riley, Braden Point, Joel Edmonston, notably Ryan Smith, Theo Fleury. They were 16-4 to the Ed Chenoweth Cup, and some of their, you already talked on, Jagger Firkus, Braden Yeager for the Penguins, and Matthew Savoy for the Sabres. Nobody that's probably going to get drafted too high this year, but they're already stacked. This team is primed to win. But they got to face the London Knights.
That's going to be rough.
So the thing about the London Knights is we know them today, and you said it, they're a powerhouse franchise. They have 5 J. Ross Robertson Cups, which, by the way, the J. Ross Robertson Cup is the original OHA junior trophy that was captured all the way back in 1910 and 11 by that Kingston Frontenac's team. So that cup has been around forever as well. But
old.
They used to stink, right? Like in the 90s, they stunk. They, I got to pull this up because it's fascinating. Yeah, so they were sold to a real estate developer in St. Thomas called Doug Terry. He died immediately before the team played a game, and was inherited to his son. He changed the name of the Budweiser Gardens, the London Ice House. He changed the team colors to eggplant and teal. And I'm going to show you this logo, SJ. This is the logo that he chose for them. I'm just going to go post it in our Discord here.
Okay, I'm ready.
This is the logo he gave the London Knights. Can you describe that?
It looks a bit like a comic book character.
It is called the Spider Knight for exactly that reason.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like a dude wearing kind of a knight's helmet, but he's like wearing a green spandex looking outfit like you'd get on like a comic book character with like purple gloves, and then he's holding a hockey stick and has ice skates on, and he's in a weird like Spider-Man pose.
Yeah.
Which makes zero sense at all.
So the Knights were purchased in 2000 by former NHL players Dale and Mark Hunter, as well as Basil McGray. And they have single-handedly changed the game there. So yeah, they have 5 J. Ross Robertson Cups, all of which were won during the Hunters' term. They have become draft masters. They trade well. They're just the best run franchise, pretty much. To give you an idea, I'm going to list some names, some of the people that have come through this team. It is absolutely wild. Daryl Sittler, Brendan Shanahan, Rick Nash, Corey Perry, Patrick Kane, John Tavares, Bo Horvat, Mitch Marner, Mac Tkachuk, and Evan Bouchard. And that's on top of the numbers they retired: Rob Ramage, Dino Ciccarelli, and a few others. That's Hockey Hall of Famers, current and future. So this team has 10 players under NHL contract. Oliver Bonk, who's going to be on the Flyers. Easton Cohen, who's going to make the Leafs. Landon Sims, who's going to make the Blues. Sam Dickinson is projected to go top 5 in the draft. Sam O'Reilly is projected to go in the second round. They are often a great team, and this year they are, even though Moose Jaw I think Moose Jaw is number 2, but the Knights are the team to beat. they dominated this regular season. They went 50-14-4 in 68 games. They scored 322 goals and only had 197 scored against, which led the OHL in both categories.
Wow.
Yep. What
a wagon.
They are a wagon. They are going to do some damage. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Memorial Cup.
Yep. I literally have marked my calendar. I added every single game to my personal calendar. There are a couple of games I won't be able to watch, but I'm really looking forward to checking them all out. And I hope that our listeners do too. It is a fun tournament, and I do highly recommend it.
Yeah, hell of a tournament. And you want to see, like, Matt Savoy is going to be a star in the NHL for a long time. Sam Dickinson is going to be a star in the NHL for a long time. And you've got players who have great chances of being, 15-year players, guys like Jagger Firkus and Oliver Bonk and Maverick Lamoureux. Every team has somebody worth watching. So I would say, if you are interested in prospects, if you have a player on one of these teams on your team, it's worth it to watch, because when they win the Memorial Cup, that's something that comes with them to the NHL. I remember when my beloved Halifax Mooseheads won. Not too many players on that team went to the NHL, but the ones who did were amazing hockey players. Nate McKinnon, Jonathan Drouin. Okay, look, he wasn't great in Montreal, but he's great now. The guy who got traded to Calgary in the Chuck trade, not
Uyghur?
Yeah, Uyghur. He was on that team. Yeah, hell of a team, and just an amazing memory. So I'd say check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be checking it out through less than legal means, as I live in the U.S., and those games are broadcasted bafflingly on NHL Network. But if you are in Canada, TSN, I believe, carries it.
I'm sure they do.
Yep. So with that, I think it's time to wrap up. You have been listening to the Neutral Zone Hotel. Neutral Zone Hotel is written, hosted, and produced by the Neutral Zone Hotel crew. Find out more at neutralzonehotel.com. Big thanks to Emily Mowbray, who designed our fabulous logo. Again, you can follow us on Instagram or Blue Sky at Neutral Zone Hotel, all one word. Join our Discord at neutralzonehotel.com/Discord and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.